Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, HD, for the Wii U. Okay, that's a lot. But a few things up front here. So, as always, there's going to be a written review. I'm going to put that in the description, and you can check that out before, after, or instead of this video review. Also, I didn't actually play Wind Waker on the GameCube before. I've seen it, most of it, and I've seen a lot of the game before, but I only played the first little bit on GameCube before. So this is going to be more of a review. Unlike the Ocarina of Time 3D thing, this is going to be more of a review of the Wind Waker in general, and I will talk a little bit about what I do know about the differences, but this is not really talking about specifically this HD version in comparison to the original. This is talking about it more as a whole in general. So I don't have a GameCube anymore to do that now, or a Wii to play that on, so this is the version we got, the one we're going to go with, and you know what? That is just fine by me. So hopefully that's okay with you guys. And also, very lastly, I'm going to assume you know some of the typical Zelda stuff by now. You've checked out my first Legend of Zelda review, or you've played other Zelda games. You have an idea of what the general Zelda thing is by now. And if you don't, like I said, check out my Legend of Zelda review of the first one. I'll explain a bit more about it, I guess. Otherwise, you're here, and you're still watching, so I guess you're ready to go. Let's talk about the Wind Waker HD. So, The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker HD. I guess I should try to start with the plot. And a lot of things kind of happen in the plot of this game as it goes, but it kind of just starts off where basically, you're on this island. It starts off with a whole cutscene thing about like this legend, which is, I guess, the titular Legend of Zelda, and this particular lore of this game. This legendary hero saved the world and sealed away the evil guy, had the Triforce, whatever. You know the drill. And that legend is told, and it kind of explains what goes on this island, because you start off and it's your birthday. And you're gonna have this big party, and as a present, you get these green clothes. That's what I'm saying. These green clothes, this green clothing, which boys of a certain age get on this island. They get this green clothing so they can look like the hero of the legend, and they're supposed to then start training to be strong and be great like the hero was. That's kind of the whole tradition on this island of, I want to say it's Windfall. Outset. It's Outset Island. Windfall is a different island. Forget I said that. And, so you're going to celebrate that, and you get this gift, and it's this looking glass. You get this gift from your sister, and you're like, oh, cool, and you're looking around. And then using that, you actually see from the spyglass, you see this big bird creature, and it has someone in its talons, and it flies into this forest that's on the top of the island. So you go over the cliff, cross the bridge, go into that forest to try and save them after getting the sword and whatever. Try to save this person. And you fight off some monsters, and you rescue the person, and then the bird thing flies off, or whatever. And then you come back outside, and your sister starts running across the bridge to greet you guys after you came out of the forest, okay and everything. And then the big bird swoops back, grabs your sister, and flies off to God knows where. I don't fucking know. And, of course, you want to go and try to save her, which is kind of the whole setting of the game. And that could get you off on your adventure. But, of course, how are you going to go save her? Well, luckily, the person that you just saved was a pirate leader. And she's got a pirate ship docked on shore. And, you end up actually riding along with these pirates, working your way up from the lowliest of the pirate ranks as you go and try to find and rescue your sister. And that's really how the adventure starts off. And eventually you get a boat, and you start doing other Zelda things in the game. You're getting items like you get in other Zelda games. You'll find things like the bow and arrow and boomerang, bombs, that kind of shit. The game, of course, has an instrument that you can use called the Wind Waker, which is this magical baton, but you use it to conduct the wind itself into notes and play songs. So it's got really an instrument itself, but it's a magic doohickey used to make music. Close enough. That's a Zelda staple. And I mean, really, in a lot of ways, this just does a lot of the stuff like that other Zelda games do. You go around, you adventure, you can explore and do side quests, you can find other, like, power-up things, find pieces of heart, you get rupees, and you buy items, and get upgrades to your other items and stuff, and you can do, you know, like I said, you can do side quests, you can go in and do these dungeons, you fight these bosses, you get more items to help you do more of the exploring and getting to more areas, and all eventually culminating into this whole final battle bullshit that happens in every goddamn Zelda game. You get the drill by now. Thing is, this game does a few things that are a bit more unique with it. Try and put a bit of a spin on that, because this is a 3D Zelda game after all. And so a lot of the gameplay is very similar to stuff like Ocarina of Time, in the way that you would, you know, come around and fight things in that three-dimensional area. But the things it does a little differently here is that the main one you're going to notice right away is that, I mean, this land is just totally fucking covered in water. This big mass of water known as the Great Sea. And you sail across this sea in order to get from island to island. And you have to chart out all of these islands as you go along so you can find out where the stuff is. And the more you play the game, the easier it becomes to travel from place to place, the easier it is to tell where you're going to go. You know, you get upgrades for that kind of stuff. But it's very much about going around and sailing to these different islands. And of course you use the Wind Waker to actually change the wind's direction, which you'll be doing a lot for sailing in order to have it sail in have it blow in a favorable direction for you to sail. Those are probably that's the biggest one. Is that, I think, is the shift of, like, sailing everywhere rather than just trying to, say, walk there. There's also other stuff on the sea as well. Enemies will oftentimes pop up on the sea. There are islands everywhere, but there are also other things like these big platforms just towering over the sea that have cannons on them. There are these old abandoned submarines. And there's a whole lot of treasure just hanging out on the bottom of the sea for you to find, you know, as you're sailing around. There's also a lot of treasure maps you can get, which will help you find the treasure that's hidden under the sea. So that's an interesting new mechanic to go along with it. And the other thing you'll notice right away, probably even sooner than the sailing mechanic, is the art style, which actually takes this more, like, cel-shaded, kind of cartoony, almost anime-type look to it. Rather than the more serious look that Ocarina was trying to, you know, emulate anyway as best the N64 could. I mean, yeah, it's a visual style, and I guess you'll notice it right away. Really, there aren't a lot of other Zelda games that look quite like it. There are a few that try, but it stands out. You'll notice. I think that's about all I can really say before getting into more, you know, specifics or anything. And I don't want to spoil too much for you. There's other plot things that happen and all that, and I don't want to spoil stuff. So let's just tell you about the stuff that I think is really cool about this. And what I really like about this, I guess, is like an interesting way to look at this, I guess, to simplify how you're looking at the way the game plays. In a lot of ways, it feels like Ocarina of Time, a lot of elements from that, like the cinematic elements and the 3D gameplay, and a lot of that mixed with the open world and exploration heavy kind of feeling of the original Legend of Zelda. And they kind of combine those two, and then they put this nice coat of polish on it where, like, they've smoothed out the edges with making the combat smoother, and they've kind of worked it so that, you know, side quests and the way hints work, you know, and they've kind of balanced everything out and put this nice coat of polish on it with that, and also put in this unique art style to make you not really recognize it, you know, to make you feel like, oh, this is just totally different, even though it's really just marrying those two ideas together in a sort of best of both worlds kind of way. Because you can just kind of sail around and do whatever you want. You can try to go where you're told to go right away, but a lot of times you can just go and be like, I'm just gonna do whatever, and like just go do whatever. Or like, I'm just gonna go to these islands now and chart everything out because I feel like it. Or you can wait and just do what the story tells you to do for now. That's a really cool thing to do. Just like do it at your own pace. You can do side quests now or wait until later. Maybe it'll be easy later. Maybe you'll want to do it later. There's a lot of cool characters here, and I think it's nice because it's an interesting little spin on them with this new art style, anyways. Along with like everything just is really smooth, also. But like, I'll hold that, put that on hold for a sec. But like it's like cool to see these new characters and ideas can come to life in the game, because like this art style kind of brings them out. And also, there's not a gigantic cast of side characters either, so each of them actually has a bit more depth than you might expect from the typical, side characters in Zelda games, who are usually just kind of quirky and weird with things that are sometimes helpful for you to hear. So that's interesting that it seems like they're kind of existing and thriving around you, rather than just being there solely to help guide you. Also, the game doesn't have any crazy, like, push of, like, it's the prophecy, you have to do this kind of thing, as much as, like, it feels much more organic the way it happens, and it feels more natural. So, like, these things that happen are still kind of crazy and unbelievable and mystical, magical bullshit because it's a Zelda game, but also it feels a little more connected because it's like, well, like, these events have led to other events, and it kind of builds on the previous events in a way that it paces itself in a good enough way, so it's like, oh, these things actually kind of make sense, they're happening right now, and I don't feel like I'm just having all this shit thrust on me. It feels like it's actually evolving with you, rather than just setting up all of the plot immediately, and then just having you follow, like, okay, like, this is what the game is, now go play the game. And then, oh, look, see, you played the game, now you get to have the conclusion of what we already set up, and I've already kind of told you will happen, it just feels like it flows a lot better than some of the other Zelda games, so that's something I really appreciated. Another thing I was going to say with that whole, like, tweaking and stuff, is that, in polishing the game, a lot of the combat feels really nice, and there's the cool little, like, musical flourishes when you're hitting enemies and stuff, and, like, visually it looks great, like, it looks really, really cool. Like, it's a visual style that really has held up. Like, you can play the GameCube version still, and it hasn't really aged today. It still looks really good. It still does what it set out to do back then. It's still just as good. It doesn't feel like, you don't turn it on and you're like, oh, this looks ugly now. This looks like weird. It's something that's actually held up because it's so stylized, and I think that's something that people didn't really appreciate at the time. And it does have a different feel to it, and I think that's a good thing. I think it, even though it might not seem as detailed in a lot of areas, it seems to work really well, and it seems the game's like very fluid, and it's very satisfying to play, because you just kind of go along with it, and maybe it's not the hardest Zelda game, but it just feels good to do the things that you do in the game. It just feels cool. And even just sailing out in that big sea is cool. It's like the Great Sea theme plays when you're sailing around. Like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it's kind of almost relaxing to just sail around like that. And it's cool because it makes you feel like you're going out on an adventure. It's awesome. I don't know. It's just really good, and it's good, and I like it, I guess is what I'm saying. And it has a way of just tying all these things together and marrying them in such a nice way that it's hard not to like it if you're a Zelda fan, because it's doing the Zelda thing. And if you like Zelda games, you're gonna probably like the Zelda thing by now. I mean, you know by now if you do or not, I guess. So a lot of great things in here, a lot of interesting things they're trying out, and it's all done in a rather compact way as well, where there's a lot of stuff you could do and try to really dig into, but it also isn't a game that's going to take forever to do. So it's a pretty nice entry-level game just for anyone to go into, because it doesn't have a bunch of the shortcomings, and it doesn't have, all these barriers to entry. It's very accessible, and the visual style is really the only thing that might seem a little off-putting, because it's not necessarily the typical Zelda visual style, I guess. But it's not a perfect game either. It's got issues. It can be a little annoying to sail around sometimes. I mean, I know it can be adventurous, but after you've gone over the world enough times, it's like, okay, I get it, I just want to get to this place. especially when you know everything is there, you don't have anything to stop for and get or look at or whatever along the way. It's like, well, I just want to go now. And there are ways to kind of get around that, especially in the HD version too. They give you a little bit extra, like, okay, here's less bullshit for you. But still, sometimes it can feel a little tedious to go around and try to do all the things, even though a lot of the things for you to go around and do are optional. Also, it has a similar problem to the overworld of Ocarina of Time, I feel, where the overworld here, this Great Sea, while it is very large, and I get that there's like an experience of sailing from place to place, there's a certain feeling there that's really interesting, and like it's cool to explore that, sure. But there's not enough to do in it. Things might pop up here and there. There are islands. There are other things. Like, I don't know. Like, there are islands and these platforms coming out of the sea and submarines and stuff. But all this stuff, like, a lot of the islands look the same. They're hard to distinguish. There's like multiple islands that look like dice blocks. So it's hard to remember which one was which. There's a lot of islands that look a few different like star islands and stuff. There are multiple like islands like that have like similar counterparts on other parts of the map, because I guess they couldn't come up with enough unique islands to use in the game, which is kind of sad. All of these like sea platforms all kind of look the same when you go by them. All the submarines look the same when you're just sailing by them. It's just different coordinates, I guess, and you don't really have a good way to mark it on your map or anything yourself. So a lot of the stuff can be a little annoying because of that, and it's hard to remember where you have been and haven't been, where you're supposed to go versus, you know, is this the wrong place or did I already go here? It can be kind of confusing. But the bigger thing is that going from place to place, it's like there's not much in the sea to really find. It's just waiting until you can get to the next place. And yeah, it never feels like it loaded a new area. Yeah, it's huge, and it's really, you know, kind of awesome to see how big this place is, especially at the time it originally came out, how big this overworld could be. And it's an experience of like exploring and going to those places. I get it, but I also feel like it's sort of a pain in the ass and sort of a waste of time sometimes. Like, sometimes it just feels like this is a big, barren overworld with not enough in it to do. Aside maybe find a bunch more, you know, a lot of more rupees, which is also another sticking point for me, because rupees are like, okay, well, you either have, you know, barely any rupees and you're trying to buy stuff that is ridiculously expensive, or you, you know, you have a shit ton of rupees and there's just nothing for you to buy. So it's hard. It's a constant thing where like they don't respect your rupees very well, which is a common problem in Zelda games, I suppose. Also, they give you stuff kind of quickly. It's kind of a shorter game, so I do feel like it was a little bit on the short side. I would have liked it to be a little longer, a little more paced, because I feel like you get a lot of items, and you get them really, like a lot of items really quickly. Especially like like fire and ice arrows are something you get at the exact same time, which I think is like, I was like, oh great, I just get both of them, fine. And they don't do enough, I think, with the puzzles and like the you know, the different ways these items could work. I don't think they did enough with that to explore different puzzles and combat and all this other stuff. I think they could have utilized them a lot more and used them to their fullest extent. And made the game a bit longer and more satisfying because of that. And I don't know, it can get just a little tedious to go around and, you know, pull up sunken treasure. After a while, it gets a little old, and that's how you get a majority of the things, is out in the water like that. Again, it feels like style over substance. It feels like it's an experience, but it's very repetitive experience for the sake of, I guess, trying to justify this overly big overworld. Yet then again, if that overworld was smaller, there wouldn't really be a need to sail around either, and then it would just be like a regular Zelda game. So, you know, like nitpicking, where do you draw the line there, I guess. And I think also the pictograph quests are a bit of a sticking point as well, where basically it's like a camera and you take pictures of shit. And for some of the quests, you're supposed to take pictures of certain things, and it's like, okay, well, do I take a picture of this? And it's like, not only do you have to figure out what you're supposed to take a picture of, but you also have to be sure to take a good picture, because if it's not good enough, you know, it's not going to count, and you're going to be going around and be like, is that even the right thing? And then you might just go back later and like take a picture of that thing again, and it magically is the right one. And they can be a little lenient at times. with it, but it can be a little confusing to know what's what and when what just to tell what you're doing if what you're doing is right. It's a bit. I guess it does kind of add to the feel it out and really figure out what you're supposed to do kind of mechanic of it, but also at the same time is feels a little loose, I guess. Now here I want to just talk about the few things I guess I can mention between the two versions that I know of. Visually, the HD version looks a little better. It's a little crisper. You can see a little further. It's a little brighter. That's about it visually. And what else? Well, of course, the Wii U version, I mostly use the gamepad, because you can use the gamepad. You can just use a normal controller, like the Wii U Pro controller, and play like you would a normal game, I guess. But if you use the gamepad, you have some other features, like you can use it as a quick reference to look down, just have your map displayed on it, or you can use it to quickly switch out items from your inventory without having to pause the game and then go through the menu all the time, which is kind of neat to just do that on the fly, especially if you're in some cool combat thing or something, you need to switch it. You can do that while you're still playing. That's kind of neat. Though you do have to take one of your hands off the controller to do that. But you can do that. Or you can just use it for off TV play and just, switch it so it's just on the gamepad and someone can watch something on TV if that feature appeals to you. That's the thing you can do. Also, you can use it for gyro controls for, aiming, which I actually really liked. I kind of like that in general, I guess. It works a little better if you're playing it on the gamepad itself, because then moving the gamepad around feels like you're, aim your sights around to aim. But it does work pretty well just for general aiming, so you can tweak your aim just a little bit by incremental movements, rather than trying to go with the stark, digital movements of the stick. So that's something I think is worth checking out. Other stuff in this version are one of the quests. I won't say what the quest is, but originally it's 20 minutes to do this entire this task for this quest, and in the HD version you get 30 minutes. So some of the things have been made a little easier, I guess, and on that account. And also there's this thing introduced, the tingle bottles, which basically you can use them to make things with text or pictures or whatever, and make Miiverse posts that then can show up in people's games if you have that setting on. So then it's they'll show up in the ocean and on the shores and stuff, and you can get hints and tips and stuff from other players, or just messages, and be oh, is there people playing? That's a neat thing that somebody said here, and they can add a little atmosphere. But I would say if you want a more pure experience, maybe don't turn those on the first time you play. I didn't. I think I left it only as filtered to just my friends, and I don't have that many people on there. One person on there right now, so oh well. I didn't get any. I think those are most of the things. I think there's some other things that are different. Obviously, you can't hook up a Game Boy Advance to it, but I think they may have made the tingle charts easier. That stuff, I don't know, but I think they might have. I like I say, you'd have to ask someone who's extensively played both to answer that one. But those are all the things that I knew about specifically for me. Oh man, I got it in the case. It's awesome. Feels so cool to have something to hold up here. Oh man. So, Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker HD. Look, a recommendation thing, I guess. This is tough. In general, let me just again reiterate that this game generally feels like kind of a combination of the exploration and open world elements of the first Legend of Zelda, along with the gameplay and cinematic elements of Ocarina of Time, with this nice layer of polish, with smoothing out the edges and have that nice little cartoony aesthetic to help you out. You might not like it that much. You might think, oh, it looks like it's too childish. But if you can get over that, it's actually pretty fun. Sorry about the glare. I don't know how to fix that. For recommendations, I guess it depends. If you have a GameCube or a Wii, get the GameCube one, because that's what you need to get. That's what plays it. And if you have a Wii U, then get this one, because that's the only one that you can use with it. If you're debating on, if you have, the ability to get either one, and you're debating on which one to get, it's kind of for you to decide, I would probably lean towards this HD one. The original one is, of course, more authentic. It is the original, and it's a bit more difficult if you want it to be a bit more challenging. But this version is a bit more convenient. It looks very slightly better. It's slightly easier. I guess slightly more convenient. And the real thing, I guess, for that also is price point. Whereas, the original is probably going to be $30 or more, I would imagine. I don't know how much it goes for these days. Whereas this one, brand new, because it's part of the Nintendo Selects, this is $20 brand new. That's a hell of a deal. You could probably get it cheaper used if it's the Nintendo Selects one. The original one might still be more, which would be weird, but I think that might still be a thing. I don't know. So, I mean, overall, I guess I generally would recommend the HD one just because, it's more convenient. It's cheaper. And it's probably easier to get at this point. But realistically, I guess if you really were thinking, I guess the one other thing is, should I get this version if I have the original? And the thing is, it's not really worth upgrading to this. There's not a lot different. Some things are kind of changed, like I said. Visuals, slightly different visuals, slightly more convenient, slightly easier. But the thing is, you already have it, so you don't really need it again. There's nothing here that would really pull you towards it because you already have it on a console. This is still a console game. It's still largely the same game. It's not like it does anything all that different. And, it's $20, but that's $20 you could spend on something else. So if you're a huge Zelda fan, yeah, why not? Here's your backup copy. Just get another one of these, and it's only going to cost you $20. That's not too bad, especially for how good this is. But if you don't have one, and you're just on the fence, you're just like, man, I have a Wii U, and, I'm wondering if I should get this. Yes, $20 for any Zelda title is a good deal. It's a good deal. And I'm sorry if I don't seem as excited about this as maybe I should be. But look, this is a great game. Okay? And it's actually even a good Zelda game. It's just that this wasn't one of the first Zelda games I played. It's not the first Zelda I played or the first one I beat. It's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite. It's not, I don't think it's the best designed or the worst designed. I don't think it's the most unique. It just kind of falls more in the middle. It's very good. It's a good Zelda game. It's just that it's not anything really remarkable aside from, the art style. But I would highly recommend this. You can jump into, whether you're a veteran of the series and you're like, I want to give this one a shot because I just haven't played it. Or you're a newcomer, would this be a good game to start with? Yes, it's a fun game. It's a good game. It's a great game and a good Zelda game, and you should get it. And, especially for $20, it's really hard to not recommend this. Great game, and I don't know what else to say. What's your favorite Zelda game? Which version do you prefer? That's the kind of stuff I want to see in the comments. Maybe that's the best one. Which version of the Wind Waker do you prefer and why? Anything else you want to bring in there, stuff I didn't mention that is different between the two that you know about, or anything else that you just want to bring up in the comments about it. Go for it, because you guys know I'm a big fan of Zelda games. Hell, I wouldn't have spent, all this time just talking about the Legend of Zelda game if I didn't really like the shit out of it. So, hopefully you guys like that. Hopefully I'll have more Zelda games coming your way. I'm still working through Phantom Hourglass, so I look forward to that sometime in the near future.